Welcome back, one and all, to the Always Bayern Chelsea show. This is going to be a special video edition episode, so head over to the YouTube channel, check that out. I also just released the Bayern Munich State of the Season address on YouTube, so go ahead, check that out while you're at it. But without further ado, here with me today, I do have a fantastic soccer player, soccer fan, and my skipper and my dear friend, Noah Rasmussen. Welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, man. Such laud and praise. I definitely don't deserve it, but thank you. I'm really happy to be sitting here, getting to talk some football.
Perfect. Well, like I said, welcome to the show. And if you have listened to more than just this episode of the show, you'll probably recognize this man's voice because we did get an official statement a few episodes ago from FC Noah himself after Chelsea took down FC Noah in the Conference League. But this episode in particular is going to be...
I have no further comments on that game, just for the clarification.
Good. But yeah, so this one we're going to focus on goalkeeping in particular because Noah is a former goalkeeper. So Noah, why don't you introduce yourself and, I don't know, talk about any sort of background you want to give?
My first introduction to soccer was, youth soccer. I'm pretty sure it was like YMCA soccer when I was really, 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 really young. I don't really remember anything about it other than the fact that my brother, who also played on the team with me, had this strategy where he would just find a spot on the field to lie down in the grass. And then as soon as the ball got anywhere near him, he'd get up and he'd run after it. And it actually it yielded at least a goal or two from what my parents tell me. But that was my earliest introduction to the sport. And then for years, just didn't have a whole lot of exposure to it. Growing up in Wisconsin, I think, you kind of only know about 3 sports, really only 2 at times.
Definitely.
It seems because the Bucks had so many woes for so many years. And then it was in sophomore or junior year of high school. I honestly can't remember now off the top of my head. But I was going to a private school at the time, and we happened to get a bunch of new students. A couple of them were... 3 of them were adopted. 2 of them were from Ethiopia. 1 was from Bulgaria. And then we had just a number of other people that came in to the school who were more athletic, specifically were gifted soccer players and had experience. And so we kind of, as a school, decided, and the guys at the school decided we really wanted to get together a soccer team. And so we put it together, started practicing, and I must have been a junior because I was one of the older guys on the team at the time. And, pretty early on, I realized that someone really needed to step up and really take some leadership. And I was one of the most vocal guys on the team. So I just started asserting myself a little bit more, encouraging guys, giving them little tips here and there. And not that I had played a whole lot of soccer, but I had watched a decent amount. Some of the guys I had mentioned before, particularly the 2 guys from Ethiopia and then the other guy from Bulgaria, were very close friends of mine. I had watched them play soccer, had played a lot of soccer just in the backyard with them, and had gotten smoked by them a number of times. But, I knew enough about it and had always just been around athletics enough where I was able to, grasp the concept of, what it means to put in the work at practice, to get better, to learn from your mistakes, that kind of thing. And so that was a thing I really, was trying to instill in my team. And I remember we had a scrimmage. I don't even remember who we played, but we set up a scrimmage, and it was our very, very, very first match of any kind, as a squad. And I remember we hadn't really, at this point, we hadn't had anybody stand out as a keeper. I had been pretty much solely been playing like center back. And so then I went up to our coach who, you know, to his credit, or maybe not so much, he had never coached soccer, had never really even played soccer. He was an accomplished athlete himself, but I mean, he was just the best that we had at the time. And so then I went up to him right before the match, and I was like, all right, coach, like, kind of walked him through our lineup, and I was like, and who are you thinking? Like, and I named a couple of guys who we had tried out in keeper, or, you know, in the goal, and I was just like, who do you want back there? And he looks at me, he's like, well, no, I was thinking of putting you back there.
Wow, just from your time as a center back?
Well, I guess, yeah. I have no idea what it was that like tipped him off to the fact that like maybe this was something that I could be good at. The only thing I think I could point to is maybe the fact that I had been so communicative and had shown and demonstrated so much leadership and was not afraid to, you know, clearly communicate to my teammates what we needed to do.
Sure.
I think that was probably that's the only thing I can think of that I may have demonstrated that would have led him to that decision.
So at that point, you were like playing soccer, playing center back. Were you in love with the sport? Were you, I don't know, it sounds like you didn't have any inclination of playing keeper.
If I'm being honest, no, I never had my sights set on playing keeper. And I'm not going to lie, when my coach told me that at first, I was a little bummed out.
Really?
I was at first, because I was kind of like, I wanted to be a part of the entire duration of the game, you know? And so there was something that just told me, I was like, okay, I think I can be good at this.
Well, if there's one thing about you, and, you know, I don't know how many of our listeners will know you in real life, but if you do, you know, you'll know that you have just impeccable form at everything you do. Whether it's picking up a golf ball or something that you drop on the ground, it rolls underneath the table, whether it's throwing a football, throwing a baseball, I mean, anything remotely athletic, chopping sushi, anything remotely athletic, you have just absolutely perfect on the, I don't know, like to a T form.
Oh, thank you. I think, again, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but I appreciate all the praise, you know?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I've known you for a while, and I didn't know any of this in terms of your background becoming a soccer star. And
well, I remember the first time you ever found out that I used to play soccer. We were up in Door
I was
County.
shocked because I knew that you played football, American football.
So I think we were just standing in the garage, right? And there was, I don't know, even think it was a soccer ball, but I just remember I started like dribbling it and passing it, and then you said something, and you were like, "Are you a footsman?" or something like that, and I was like,
and it turns out he is a footsman.
I was a bit, yeah. I mean, I guess I definitely used my hands more throughout my soccer career, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's just awesome. And especially, you know, you mentioned this right in the beginning, but growing up here in Wisconsin, at least for me, soccer wasn't even on my radar as a sport.
It isn't for most.
As a sport to play. You know, it was baseball, basketball, and football, really. And later I got into other sports. Yeah. And later I got into more, but yeah, it's interesting. I think it's cool that the global aspect of, you know, these guys that you're friends with from around the world helped you jump into soccer. But what sort of allegiances did you have growing up? I know that your family is Chelsea fan.
Yes.
Almost all of them are Chelsea fans. So what was your fandom of the sport like growing up?
Okay, so my fandom really blossomed when I started playing. And I think that had a lot to do with, I mean, the excitement of it. There was also the time that I was, you know, well, okay. There's one other person I should give some credit to for this. I had, when I was going to private school, we had a teacher that came in and taught there for a little while, a guy named Daniel Lopez, and he's from Barcelona, Spain, and naturally, the guy loves soccer.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, at the time, both Barcelona and Spain were really good.
Yeah.
I remember watching, what was it, Oh gosh, it would have been the 2010 World Cup, right?
Yeah, Spain won that one.
Yeah, it would have been the 2010 World Cup. We watched it, and I just remember standing there watching it with him, and they show the King of Spain on the TV, and he's just like, "That's my king, that's my king," and he's getting all into it, and it was that World Cup that really started to I guess really ignite my fanship, but also I got to go to a lot of Milwaukee Wave games. Really liked that. Getting to go to the Wave camps, getting to meet and know some of the players. I ended up going to a Wave goalkeepers camp,
Sure.
where, and not to toot my own horn, but the starting goalkeeper of the Wave told me that after I graduate high school, that if I don't have a plan, that I should look into indoor soccer as a potential career move. So
that's huge.
I mean, not yet. Like I said, not to toot my own horn, but I was good. I was good at this. I wasn't really good. I'm not gonna say I was magnificent, but I had some natural raw ability, and outside of those Wave camps, I never got coached. Really,
Wow.
I never got coached. Something about it was pretty natural to me. I played catcher in baseball. I think that skill kind of translates a little bit.
Sure.
The idea of not letting a ball get past you, at least. But yeah, I mean, it was playing it that really ignited my fanship.
Two things I just want to mention. One, the 2010 World Cup may have ignited your love for the sport. For me, it ignited my love for Shakira and Waka Waka, because that was just that's one thing that I remember from that World Cup over there in Africa. And yeah, that was just a special time. I'll never forget those promotional videos and that dance. I could probably still do it to this day. I won't, but I probably still could. And
I feel like every World Cup since that one has been trying to recapture some of that marketing magic, and none of them have quite done it again.
It's true.
Even down to the balls they use for that World Cup, they were magnificent. I mean, they're some of the most beautifully very simple, basic design. But I remember I watched the 2010 World Cup, and I was just like, I need to go get one of those, and I went out and I got one of those soccer balls.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. So the other thing I wanted to get to then was, so the 2010 World Cup, you kind of become a fan of soccer. Spain's doing great. You're watching the Wave. You're a fan of the Wave. Did you have experiences going to other soccer matches live, or was it mostly just local stuff, Wave?
Just local stuff. Honestly, I can't say I've ever been to a soccer match outside of a Milwaukee Wave. But yeah, I mean, my fanship, I would say, has mostly been international. I guess you could say I'm a World Cup fan.
Sure.
More or less.
Okay, so yeah, international more than clubs, because like I said, your family's a Chelsea fan, but you haven't really watched them as much or been that into them as, say, your brother or your dad, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, my whole family, my brothers and my dad, all converted to Chelsea within a month. They were just all decided we're gonna rep the Chels now, and so
you got some lineage back there, don't you?
Yeah. I don't know if it has any actual connection to Chelsea itself, but
yeah, sure.
But yeah, I mean, my dad is a good portion English, so
awesome,
and they're very Anglo. They love all that stuff. So, anyways, I didn't want to I guess almost as a sign of rebellion in a way. I was like, no, I'm not gonna cheer for Chelsea.
Yeah.
And my uncle at the time was an Everton fan, and at the time Tim Howard played for Everton. But I mean, as a keeper, I love Tim Howard. I mean, he played with this swagger that I really loved.
Great beard.
Yeah, great beard. And so I really, and the fact that Everton was this very blue collar city kind of resonates with me from being from Milwaukee. All of that I just really appreciated. And so, I mean, I guess I sort of cheered for Everton for a while.
Sure.
But the thing was, Everton was so bad. It just got, and a lot of their matches just weren't ever on TV where I could watch them back then. I'm sure it would be a lot easier now. I guess the club thing never really took off for me. And I kind of gave it a shot, and I think it was more or less my team that didn't really excite me that much.
Okay, so the other thing I wanted to ask you was, is there anything in particular that you think people miss about actually playing the position keeper, or just what's important to you as someone who's played keeper?
Oh Gosh.
I'm sure you could talk a lot about that, but just give me some spark notes on it.
Do you want to do another episode where we tackle that question? Because we could do a whole episode on that. What is the most important thing? I mean, the short answer is everything. Because...
Short and sweet.
I mean, it's not... And when I say everything, I mean, I do mean all of the skills that go into playing keeper, right? Mm-hmm. Those are all important. But I also mean everything that is happening in the game and being able to notice it, being aware of it. I think awareness is probably the most important skill for a keeper. It's just being aware of where you are on the field, being aware of where everyone else is on the field. And that sounds, I feel like maybe that sounds a little understated, but it sounds so much simpler than it is, you know?
Yeah.
It's so easy, especially as a keeper, to get so locked in on the ball. Mm-hmm. And there's so much else going on around you that is really, really crucial and critical to your job, to saving goals. And I think at times, and I guess on some level, to answer your other question, what do people miss? I think you know, on some level, it's sort of like the same answer. But I guess the main thing I would say that people miss in general is I think people are often too quick to put the blame on the keeper.
Yep.
And I think that, you know, maybe outside of playing like NFL quarterback, playing goalkeeper professionally is like one of the most divisive positions in all of sports.
Yeah.
If you could have put up an incredible game, but because your offense couldn't get it going, if you give up one goal,
it's over.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. That's
the game, right? And so and people are going to, you know, sometimes people are going to look at that and they're going to be, and even if I think fans are pretty intelligent now, where they are able to, and I mean they have been for a little while, but you know, I think especially with the evolution of the goalkeeper position and how much more integral it is to the entire game.
Yep. Even just the goalkeeper now is like another defender, pretty much.
Yeah. It's another defender. It's somebody who is going to at times initiate the attack. That's something that was not a thing for a really long time in this sport. And so I think that the main thing that people miss is just sort of, I guess, being able to sort of read through the bullshit. You know, it's that's really what it I think it is because there are also times where, you know, like I think that people will be like, oh, we'll almost give the keeper grace on something, and I'll look at it and I'll be like, no, he messed up.
Yeah, it goes both ways.
Yeah, it like, and I'm sure if a keeper's left out on an island, like that's never a position that a keeper wants to be in, but there are things that you can do in those situations that are mistakes.
Right. And
I think that sometimes people are willing to almost excuse a keeper in that situation, even when they make mistakes. I think at this point, the average fan knows enough about the goalkeeping position, especially considering how far along we are into this evolution of what a goalkeeper is now. Mm-hmm. I think people are much more aware of that, and I think that there's just so much more exposure also to the sport that people are pretty good at being able to, you know, to rightfully discern. I think the biggest thing though that people miss, this just came to mind. The biggest thing I guess that I think people miss about like what it goes into being a goalkeeper is the communication.
Yeah.
I think that people, you know, are obviously the awareness, all of the physical skills, those kinds of things. You know, everybody knows about that stuff by now, right?
Yeah, coordination, actually making saves.
Right, but the communication is something that you don't even see when you're playing the game, right? Like maybe you'll notice out of the corner of your eye, you'll see like the goalkeeper, you know, point off in one direction or another, and maybe they'll show a close up where he's talking to one of his defenders or something, you know, but that's not something that you're really getting in real time. And I don't think that people, if there's anything that, like, as the average fan that you are missing about the goalkeeper position, it's that. And in some cases, maybe you're missing it because it's not happening.
Right.
But there's also plenty of times where it's like, yeah, you're not even going to see it because there's no way for you to capture that in real time.
Yeah. Word. Okay. That's a good, thorough answer. Now this just came into my head, so if you don't have an answer for it, that's fine. But give me a couple favorite memories or most interesting memories of playing the position. Anything that comes to mind, if you got it. I know I'm not going off the outline here, but.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll give you 3.
Give me a crumb.
Yeah.
At least a crumb. That's a full meal.
I'll give you 3 bites.
Okay.
So, like, let's say, like, we're out at some real fancy dining, some real fancy restaurant.
Family style, hopefully.
No, not even. They're giving you, it's like a 1 bite. It's a 1 bite, like,
we're at Costco and we're just getting samples at this point.
Essentially, yeah.
That'll satiate me for now, though.
Yeah, but
I just ate. So.
But it's not like Costco because I'm giving you beef tartare and
I'm
giving
you, yeah, higher class.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. I got calamari on one of these little tidbits
God.
for you.
We're far from the nearest Costco.
Yeah. All right. So I played a lot of indoor in college. I played it all 4 years. Played a lot of games. I played with some really great players. I played with a guy named John Thomas who honestly reminds me a little bit of Harry Kane in a way.
Wow.
I mean, in the sense of the profile, you know,
sure.
He's not going to blow you away with his athleticism or his speed, but his body control, his IQ, his just ability to be in position and find people, was stellar.
Awesome.
And so the first memory that I have actually involves when I was playing with John Thomas. He was playing. We weren't sure if he was going to be good to go because he had hurt his ankle. I think he had been doing a trail run and kind of like twisted his ankle on a branch or something, or a root or something.
Yeah.
So we're in game, and I all of a sudden notice that John keeps grabbing his ankle again. So I am watching him more closely, keeping an eye on like how he's doing.
Yep.
And as I'm watching, I start noticing, and I also started noticing it because, every time he got the ball, this would happen. But their players were coming in and would just start kicking his ankle.
Whoa.
They just would come in and just start
foul
going.
Play.
Yeah, just start coming in and going right at his ankle that they knew was hurt. And I remember there was one, I was fuming mad. Like, I'm furious. And there was a point. I don't want to see that. There was a point where the captain of their team, ball comes into the center and he just takes a rip right at me, right? And I glove it and I took it, and as soon as I caught it, I took it and I just chucked it over the goal behind me.
Yeah.
So it was I was like, I'm giving up a corner. I didn't care, but I marched right out and I went right up to this guy. I put my finger right in his chest and I was like, I know what the hell you're doing. And I was like, if I see you do it again, you are not going to be happy.
Wow.
And he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, I see you guys kicking his ankles every single time that he gets the ball.
That's a leader.
You know that he has a hurt ankle. If I see any of you do that again, I will personally take you out.
That's a leader right there. Wow.
So I walked back into my goal, and then they came up to me after the game. We're like, oh, sorry, man. And I was just like, don't ever effing do that again.
Yeah. That has no place in this beautiful game.
No, that is Bush League,
Bush League.
Next memory I had that was like a highlight of mine. I remember there was one point I saved 3 goals in like, I don't know. It felt like 5 seconds, but it probably was a little bit longer than that. It was a really fast sequence.
6 or 7 seconds.
Yeah, something like that. So what happened was that a dude off to my left side from the right side of the pitch, right? He indoor pitch, right? So he takes a rip at me, and I had to make a diving save. Ball squirts out to the corner. I get up, and as soon as I get up and I'm back in a position, the ball had already been swung back to center. Dude takes a rip, and I come back over, make another save, and This one I made. Yeah, I slid with my legs because I remember it popped up into the air.
Mm-hmm.
It popped up into the air, and as I'm on the ground, this other dude comes in and just takes another rip right at me, and I'm just able to get one of my paws up and poke it up, and it goes up over the goal.
Ah, beautiful.
Yeah, that was great. That was great. And
all right, cherry on top.
Cherry on top.
Number 3.
Freshman year, I was playing a match for the final. And I had been playing. I remember the opposing keeper. He was a senior. His name was Anthony Rizzo Lanza.
Wow.
And he was considered consensus the best keeper on campus. And he and I had gotten to know each other. He had watched me before a couple of times. I had watched him. Dude was really good. Dude was really, really good. And yeah, he was a senior, so this was like his last game that we had. This was all intramural. So, I mean, take it for what it is. You know, it's intramural soccer. But we had some really good players out there. And so Rizzo and I go head to head, and we're like coming down to the end in the second half, and it's still 0-0.
Oh.
And I just remember it was like we got some great shots on him, and he just kept saving them one after another. And I kept making saves, and we were just going back and forth. Like, I mean, it was honestly something that, like, if I were to, you know, dramatize it up, right? You know, it sounds like something like, you know, these two great keepers going at it.
A battle of the Titans,
right?
yeah, Clash of the Titans, yeah. And
it's funny because both of us were, you know, men of like 5'7" stature. So like, but anyways, I ended up giving up one goal, and it was one of those goals where I might have been, I honestly, I can't even remember the shot. I don't even remember the shot. I gave up one goal.
Blocked it out. Gone forever.
And yeah, but I won't forget, Rizzo walks up to me after the match, gives me a hug, and he was just like, "Dude, you were amazing out there."
Wow.
He was like, "You were amazing."
It's like a passing of the torch moment.
Yeah, well, he said that to me. He's like, this league's all you now.
Wow.
Like
the king.
Yeah, he passed it on, and he was just like, he was like, this is all you. He's like, and he told me, he's like, don't let that goal eat you up, man, because like you played an amazing match.
Wow.
So,
that's really heartfelt.
That was the cherry on top.
Yeah, I mean, we went all the way from just Bush League, dirty play, foul play even, to
great camaraderie across the pitch. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, now the moment maybe you've all been waiting for, but I want to kind of switch gears now and we'll talk about Bayern and Chelsea, of course. Jim will come in to talk about Chelsea, but first of all, the greatest goalkeeper of all time, Manuel Neuer. Just give me some brief thoughts about him or anything you want to say about Neuer.
I mean,
again, could be another episode in itself, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like I got a lot to say about Manuel Neuer because the dude is one of my favorite players to ever step onto a professional soccer pitch. I remember watching the 2014 World Cup, him with Germany, and I just remember watching this guy, and I was just I had not at the time yet heard of Neuer. Mm-hmm. I probably I think he played in the 2010 World Cup for Germany.
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
So I think I'd seen him before for sure, but I hadn't really ever been on my radar. You know, obviously I knew about the two of the greatest keepers within the last couple of decades and of all time.
Yeah.
I think Manuel Neuer is absolutely one of the. I think he's top 3 for sure. To put him at number 1 is really tough because I mean you also have these two guys, Gianluigi Buffon and Iker Casillas, who at the time were absolutely incredible.
Hard to compare eras to in every sport. It's like
that. And that was sort of a transition of eras, And the thing is, this is one thing I was gonna bring up when we're talking about like the sweeper keeper style, and Manuel Neuer is. I mean, if he's not the godfather of it, he's certainly like really, really, really close. Because he's not the original. There was a guy in the '80s named Stanley Menzo, I believe, who was considered one of the really early like good sweeper keepers.
Yeah, we're getting a history lesson here too. I love it.
Yeah, and while we're doing a little history lesson, so 1992 was when they instituted the pass back rule. So where the keeper couldn't just pick up
With
a pass
his hands,
back, and just eat up clock that way. Which is part of the reason why it's like on some level comparing the keeper position from before 1992 to now is really unfair. And what's interesting, if you look at what coincides with that, 1991 is when Manuel Neuer started his youth career. So he had 1 year playing youth, soccer, and where he's not playing with those rules. So his entire career he played with those rules. So he is the one who like really like pioneered this style of play.
Definitely. Godfather. I think you could call him the Godfather.
I think you really could, because if you take a look at what he even is more of a sweeper keeper than other guys out there who are considered sweeper keepers now.
I mean, this year, for example, he plays at the middle of the pitch. He plays on the other team's half sometimes.
The thing that blows my mind is the confidence that he has to be able to go outside of the penalty box and be able to challenge a ball handler and be able to make a play on him, and sometimes even be able to take the ball away, and then has the confidence to dribble it and then make it a pass. That is something that you, even today, with how the game has evolved, you still don't really see all that often. There was a play against, I want to say it was against Argentina in that 2014 World Cup, where he makes a sliding save, ball pops up, and it's like he almost did this like intentionally. He popped it up, and then he gets up and runs over to the corner of the penalty box and catches it himself. Like, that was such a like
classic.
Yeah, that's a classic Neuer play, and it's just it just speaks so much to he is so athletic. He is so skilled with the ball. There are probably maybe not in like the top 5 leagues in Europe, but like there are definitely professional footballers out there who do not have the foot skills that Manuel Neuer has.
100%.
And that's nuts, because like we're talking about, and then you talk about all these things that he does right there, right? We haven't even talked about the fact that he is one of the best shot savers of all time.
Totally. His
reflexes are insane. I mean, just so quick. He's so good with his feet on the saves. I don't know if I've ever seen a keeper who plays as aggressive as he does and is so just sure-handed, so good.
So steady.
You don't feel like he's ever overplaying. And I think that's why one of the things I was thinking about when thinking about the sweeper style, right? I know something that you had said in our conversation the other day was live by the sword, die by the sword.
Live and die by the sword.
Right?
That's the name of the game with Neuer.
Yeah, and I think that part of the thing with him is too, and part of the reason why he's so successful at it, because the thing is that with him, you don't die by the sword that often, or you haven't really that many times.
More often now, later in his career, but I mean, with a guy like him, he's been so steady, and you trust him.
Right. I mean, the guy's 39 years old, right? Like,
yep.
It's insane, and I mean, so that's why I think like the phrase that came to my mind when thinking of like the sweeper style and that like live by the sword, die by the sword sort of dichotomy, right? Is I think the key to being like a good, successful sweeper keeper is what's the expression? Know thy enemy, know thyself.
Yeah.
It's one, understand who you're playing, because you will notice Neuer adjusts how aggressive he is based on who he's playing, of course. And so I think that is like kind of the key on some level to being a good sweeper keeper, is that you have to understand who you're playing, who you're going against.
Right. And
then your own limitations.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to say about Neuer is this year he's been catching a lot of flack, and I did mention this in the State of the Season November international break episode I just put out, but he's been catching a lot of flack because his numbers aren't as good as they've been in his career, especially his save percentage.
Sure.
But one thing you do have to realize is the style that Bayern's playing this year means that the shots that people get against him are oftentimes 1v1s.
They're going to be a lot higher percentage shots. Yeah.
Right, and so like maybe his ability to make saves, his reflexes, all that stuff has decreased a little bit. I mean, he's 39. That just is going to happen.
Well, yeah, and he had a broken leg 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So
skiing incident. Airlifted off the mountain.
Yeah, broken leg when you're 36, 37 years old, something like that. And then you're still trying to play football. We all know the first thing that comes when you're aging, even amongst an athlete, is you're going to lose some speed.
Yep.
And you're going to lose a little bit of agility. You're not going to, and you're just not going to be as durable as you used to be.
Right. And that's just to say, there's still nobody I would rather have playing that position. I think his style is just so important to Bayern's defense as a whole, and their identity as a team, that even a Neuer who's lost a step or two, I'm taking him over probably anybody else.
Well, and you say you talk about how important he is to their defense. I mean, but how important also is he to their aggressive style of play on offense?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, all of it. The back line
to have
focuses.
To have a guy from the back who can initiate and start an attack like that. I mean, he plays balls that lead to goals.
Yeah.
And so that's something that is very, very important. And then one other thing too, you talk about the back line, and I think another reason why maybe his numbers are dipping. Yeah, it is the style of play, but there's also been, from listening to you guys, they've been dealing with some injuries on the back line.
Yep, they don't have a right back right now.
Right, and I think they've been dealing with some inconsistent play from that back line as well.
100%, especially the center backs.
So a goalie is only ever going to be as good as his back line allows him to be. I'm not going to say as good as his back line is, but as good as his back line allows him to be, because if your back line's just letting you get hung out to dry all the time, goals are going to start going in. That's just how it is.
Agreed. Well, why don't we bring Jim in here now, and we can talk about Big Bob Sanchez and Chelsea, as well as anything else you've got to say.
So I'm here with Noah, who's been talking to Danny about Manuel Neuer, Bayern Munich, and his days as a goalie. And it's time now to talk about a lesser man as a keeper, but a greater man in some other ways.
Stature for sure.
Stature for sure. We are, of course, talking about Robert Sanchez, the current number one keeper at Chelsea. Some out there might say Chelsea have too many keepers, as many as 11 on the roster. Not necessarily true when you consider loans and other things, but Sanchez is the main man right now, and he's had a tumultuous start to his Chelsea career, to say the least, including this season. I want to get your initial reaction when you first started seeing some highlights of him.
The first thing you notice, obviously, is, and I know you are waiting to see better play from him to start calling him Big Bob, but Big Bob is a big man. 6'6". He's got a strong athletic frame. And that's exactly what you want from a keeper. If you're gonna build a goalkeeper, you want him to be tall, you want him to be athletic, and you want him to be strong, because there are times where the goalkeeper definitely has to use his body to be able to win balls, to make plays. That's the first thing that comes to mind. And then as I watched him, the things I think he's good at, I think he's got pretty good reflexes. They're not Manuel Neuer level reflexes, but who has that? Very few who've ever stood between the posts have those kind of reflexes. But he's got pretty good reflexes as a keeper. And obviously that frame helps help make up some of that ground where he might not be as quick as some of these other guys. The one thing I think he is maybe strongest at, just from watching highlights, is I think he's got pretty good vision on the ball when players are taking shots from further out in the penalty box or even outside of the penalty box, and being able to track that ball through traffic. I've seen guys just take some howitzers of shots at him coming through traffic, and he's able to track that ball, and I think that's one of his biggest strengths from what I've seen. I think he's relatively solid at being able to go up and attack balls on corners and crosses coming in. Frankly, I didn't get to see a whole lot of that from him. You had to watch more matches, I guess, to see more of those plays. The one thing I will say is that I guess I kind of expected him to be better considering how big he is.
I would agree.
But the reason why I don't think he's as good at that, I don't think it's because he's not willing to be physical or go up and like attack at the at the high point. And now we're like, so those are his strengths. Do you want me to go into his weaknesses? Or do you want to give some feedback there?
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of feedback because I agree with some of what you've said. I think his best ability is shot stopping, making saves.
Yeah.
He has single-handedly given Chelsea 3 points at least once, maybe twice this season. The game against Bournemouth where he saves a penalty and they win 1-0. So without that huge save, they're not getting the 3 points there. So I think he's got back-to-back months of save of the month. Just got it for his save against Forest, I think it was.
Yeah,
so that's huge.
He can make incredible plays. I mean, some of the plays that he's made are I mean, they're not quite. I don't know. There's something about the way Neuer plays and not to keep going back to him, but I think I appreciate that style of play a little bit more. And so some of his saves are maybe more to me just like, oh wow. But I mean, I've seen so many saves from Bob Sanchez that I've just been like, oh my god, like especially when you realize just like how much reach the guy has.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there are times where he's jumping like all the way from one post to the other almost to make a save, and yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. The guy knows how to block a shot.
And that's the thing about him that so many fans I think are frustrated on one end because you see that he has the raw ability, stature, kind of all the intangibles that you want from a keeper.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side of the coin, that's also a great positive, clearly, because although you're frustrated that he's not living up to those intangibles, you still think he has a potential.
Sure.
And he's 26.
Yeah.
Keepers tend to develop a little bit later, take a little more time. So he's not old by any means. So I think that's kind of the key for me, is if you can teach him these other things, his weaknesses, make him get better, which we'll discuss next year. I think that's what keeps me coming back to thinking he can still be great.
Oh yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I mean, I was thinking it was really interesting how you take a look at we're talking about these two keepers, right? And you got one guy who's at the very tail end of his career. I mean, honestly, as old as Manuel Neuer is, I mean, how many years has he got left? Who knows? But then you got a guy like Bob Sanchez, who's in his first contract with a big club, and is at the very beginning of his career. And the other thing that I think it's interesting, if you look at like the when Manuel Neuer really started to arrive on the scene, he signed with Bayern in 2011, I believe. Had that 2012 Champions League run. And then the 2014 World Cup, that's right around the same age that Bob Sanchez is at right now.
True.
So, there's still plenty of time. There's still plenty of hope for him to get some of these other things that he's lacking. But yeah, I mean, if you want to take like a raw, like the raw like abilities and just like physical attributes that you want out of a goalkeeper, professional goalkeeper, I mean, it's hard to draw up a better, prototype than what Bob Sanchez is.
I would agree. And we'll see what happens in his future, clearly. There's things he needs to work on. And I want to touch on a couple things you actually mentioned when you were discussing your own journey as a keeper. Because, first off, the way you started as a keeper, I thought was interesting. Because you got a guy like Sanchez, who clearly is a goalie because of his height, his athletic ability, the things we've talked about, whereas you started as a keeper because your coach thought that you communicated super well and those were your skills. So the difference there is so clear, and that's a weakness we'll talk about with Sanchez.
Oh, yeah.
And then the other piece of it is how you mentioned one of the most important things, and I agree, is awareness, and in that comes with decision making. I think those two play hand in hand in how a keeper sets himself up on the pitch at all times, and then based on where he is and how his awareness is, he makes key decisions based off of that. And those are two things that Bob is lacking in a little bit right now.
Oh, 100%. I mean, the play that comes to mind was, I want to say it was against Bournemouth that he lazy pass, gave it right back to him, ended up leading to a goal.
That was against Brighton, yeah.
Brighton, that's right. And the thing is like, that was, one, it was a lazy pass, which I'm not saying that Bob's a lazy player. That's not what I'm trying to say. It's a lazy pass in the sense that it's like, one, if you're going to get it to that guy, put a little more zip on it. But two, that was not the pass that he should have been making. When in doubt, okay, in those situations, when in doubt, clear it out. That's what I was always told. When in doubt, clear it out. And there was plenty of opportunity for him to be able to do that. And then the other thing, to make it even worse, though, I watched that. I think I watched that play probably like 5-6 times last night, because I had to keep watching it just to make sure that I was not seeing something. If you look on the opposite side of the pitch to where he had two of his own players who were completely uncontested. And the thing is that one of them was there's one thing that you're told as a keeper that you never want to do is you never want to pass the ball back across the goal, right? So he would have had to have done that. But the thing is that everything is in front of him. He has a defender off to his left who he could have passed it to, but then even if he didn't, he had another defender who was further off to his left, further down the pitch, that he could have tried to get the ball to. And so there were options that he had, and instead what he decided to do is make a very soft, very boneheaded pass. That's the only word I've got for it, really. But yeah, that play comes to mind right away. There's a couple other plays, like the penalty against, I think it was Man U, right?
Yep.
Where that ball crosses in, and I mean that one. There's a couple of reasons why that I think that was just not a smart play by Bob.
And he's had a couple of those this year. I think the Bournemouth penalty actually might have been a similar play that he caused, and then ends up saving it.
Where he came out and he ends up making contact with the
guy. I forget if it was that one or there's been a few. I mean,
he's
tied right now, as I sent to you about a week ago, for the most plays that have led to a penalty, which isn't a great stat to be leading.
There's just some of these plays where it's like I think his reads are bad at times on some of these some of the, like, his angles. I don't like his angles. There was that one goal against, was it the goal against, yeah, it was the one against Arsenal, where I was just like, dude, you gotta be, if he had been on the post, that goal is not a goal.
Yeah, and that all goes back to the awareness. I mean, you gotta know to cover your near post there.
Right, and that's something that I made that mistake one time in my career where I didn't know where I was in conjunction to the post. I never forgot again because it led to a goal. It's unacceptable. It's the only word I've got for it.
I agree. It's a tough look. I think ultimately a lot of this comes down for Big Bob to confidence. He was Brighton's top goalie. They demote him. He ends up going to, I think, their third choice. Chelsea pick him up. He's been kind of hit or miss, lost his job last year to Petrovic for some time. But these decisions, a lot of them are confidence. And the key as well, I will stick up for him just a little bit here because, you talk about, I forget your phrase, about kicking the ball out. When in doubt, kick it out, or whatever you said. But yeah. I'll stick up for him here because with Maresca's system, he wants to play out from the back. And he's actually said multiple times after matches that if he does bomb it away too much, he'll pull him from the match. So I think as long as Enzo is okay with the risk of chancing that, certainly if it's going to keep happening a ton, you're going to have to bench Robert because he's not doing well enough. But that's a key component that he needs to still build that confidence in playing that style. And I think eventually it's going to pay off, or he's just not going to be good enough and they'll turn to somebody else.
Well, and yeah, I can, with that knowledge, that's the strategy, right? So, but that's why, to my point, he had two defenders, on the other side who he could have passed it to. Or the other thing is too, play it to the boundaries, because that's another thing is that you don't want to play it back into the middle. in the middle is where things go wrong for you, because everything happens so much faster out there, in the middle there. Whereas if you got it out on the the side, out towards the boundary, like, you have more time. There just is more time for you because nobody's shooting from out there.
Right. It's a give or take, because the way they are playing in this system, when you go up the middle there, and let's say it's a Caicedo coming down from the defensive midfield to get it, or even one of the center backs, then what they do a lot of times is they'll have a defender on their back and they'll immediately then go out to the side. So that creates space there. So I do get it sometimes why they go through the middle, where sometimes if you go straight out to the boundary, it might be covered up too much and then you can't go anywhere from there. I see your point as well. I think it just depends on the situation, who you're playing against. It's better, in my opinion, when it's a center back that's creating that first pass to the middle, as opposed to Sanchez, because he's just not a good enough passer, and he panics.
You don't want him in that position. And I mean, that's why one of the we talk about his confidence, and I think part of that is what it leads to a lot of indecisiveness. And that's why I mentioned earlier, I think he could be better at like going up at the high point to be able to attack some of these balls on a corner or a cross that's coming into the box. And the reason why he's not as good with the size that he has is because he seems to like almost not he decides too late that he wants to go out there and go after that ball. Those decisions need to be made before you get in the game. You need to know what you're doing in a specific situation before that happens to you, so that when it happens, you just do it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll certainly see what happens. I think the good thing is a lot of this is fixable. I'm hoping he can fix some of these things. I think Chelsea do need a top keeper to finish top four consistently. Certainly need a top keeper if they want to win the Premier League, go far in these European competitions over the next few years.
And I mean, arguably the two best keepers in the world right now are both in the Premier League, and Ederson and Alisson. So
yeah, and I'd even throw David Raya up there the last year as a top 5 keeper in the world. So,
and then there's that what's that other guy that's been up that's Mamardashvili is another one.
Well, and Liverpool signed him for next year out of Georgia. So, and then of course you got Emi Martinez at Aston Villa, who made one of the great saves in the World Cup that you'll see. So, I think we'll certainly see what happens with Robert Sanchez. Chelsea have some exciting prospects in their team, some young guys that might see some time over the next few years.
What's his contract situation right now?
Sanchez, they signed him to a typical Clear Lake Capital 7-year deal, so he's certainly around for a long time. Right. Same with Jorgensen, and same with anybody they sign.
Yeah. One thing that's nice about like European club soccer that I've learned is that it's much easier to get rid of players you don't want anymore than it is in like American professional leagues at times.
I would agree. Yeah, even with a long deal, guys will take you. You might have to take a bath on them, but it's fine. I will say, if you're going to keep an eye on one of the young prospects, just remember the name Mike Penders. Might be the next Courtois Belgian prospect. But I'll just leave it at that for now. But appreciate you coming on here and talking Bayern and Chelsea keepers. And I'm sure we'll be checking in with you throughout the season.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great.
Remember, as always, like and subscribe to the YouTube channel for more content. We'll be pumping out a lot more as club football comes back here this week. And, check out the podcast on Apple and Spotify. Check us out on Twitter, TikTok. And, as always, Mia San Mia.